Greetings, warriors. Mr. Patrick Grombeck here. Today we're going to be covering the health topic of the dangers of smoking, right? Between tobacco, cigarettes, e-cigarettes, chewing tobacco, there's a lot of information. As I was making this presentation, I found it very difficult to compress all the information that I wanted to get out and still cover the things that I found were most important, all right? So I'm going to go through this kind of quickly. Before getting started, the reason I chose this topic is due to my past experience as a middle school student. I remember being 13 years old, the summer before my 8th grade year, when one of my best friends and I were hanging out at the park. When another friend, who was about to be a sophomore, asked if I wanted a cigarette. Having lost my grandpa a few years prior to emphysema, a lung disease he acquired from smoking during his time in the military, I had the willpower to say no. One of my good friends did not, and I'll get more into that story at the end of the presentation. Before getting into it, I want you to take a look at some of these pictures, all right? The first one is a set of twins, one that smoked, one that did not. As you can see, the one had much more wrinkles and things like that. Below it, a smoker's hand. You can see the discoloration in their fingers and nails. Smoker that has COPD and now needs a breathing machine. The yellowing of and decaying of the teeth here of a smoker. All right, and even though this is a cartoon image, you can see the difference in the healthy lung and the lungs of a smoker. To get right into it, we're going to watch a short video on the dangers of smoking and how it affects all organs in your body.
Cigarettes aren't good for us. That's hardly news. We've known about the dangers of smoking for decades. But how exactly do cigarettes harm us? Let's look at what happens as their ingredients make their way through our bodies and how we benefit physically when we finally give up smoking. With each inhalation, smoke brings its more than 5,000 chemical substances into contact with the body's tissues. From the start, tar, a black, resinous material, begins to coat the teeth and gums, damaging tooth enamel and eventually causing decay. Over time, smoke also damages nerve endings in the nose, causing loss of smell. Inside the airways and lungs, smoke increases the likelihood of infections, as well as chronic diseases like bronchitis and emphysema. It does this by damaging the cilia, tiny, hair-like structures whose job it is to keep the airways clean. It then fills the alveoli, tiny air sacs that enable the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide between the lungs and blood. A toxic gas called carbon monoxide crosses that membrane into the blood, binding to hemoglobin and displacing the oxygen it would usually have transported around the body. That's one of the reasons smoking can lead to oxygen deprivation and shortness of breath. Within about 10 seconds, the bloodstream carries a stimulant called nicotine to the brain, triggering the release of dopamine and other neurotransmitters, including endorphins, that create the pleasurable sensations which make smoking highly addictive. Nicotine and other chemicals from the cigarette simultaneously cause constriction of blood vessels and damage their delicate endothelial lining, restricting blood flow. These vascular effects lead to thickening of blood vessel walls and enhance blood platelet stickiness, increasing the likelihood that clots will form and trigger heart attacks and strokes. Many of the chemicals inside cigarettes can trigger dangerous mutations in the body's DNA that make cancers form. Additionally, ingredients like arsenic and nickel may disrupt the process of DNA repair, thus compromising the body's ability to fight many cancers. In fact, about 1 of every 3 cancer deaths in the United States is caused by smoking. And it's not just lung cancer. Smoking can cause cancer in multiple tissues and organs, as well as damaged eyesight and weakened bones. It makes it harder for women to get pregnant, and in men, it can cause erectile dysfunction. But for those who quit smoking, there's a huge positive upside with almost immediate and long-lasting physical benefits. Just 20 minutes after a smoker's final cigarette, their heart rate and blood pressure begin to return to normal. After 12 hours, carbon monoxide levels stabilize, increasing the blood's oxygen carrying capacity. A day after ceasing, heart attack risk begins to decrease as blood pressure and heart rates normalize. After 2 days, the nerve endings responsible for smell and taste start to recover. Lungs become healthier after about 1 month, with less coughing and shortness of breath. The delicate, hair-like cilia in the airways and lungs start recovering within weeks and are restored after 9 months, improving resistance to infection. By the 1-year anniversary of quitting, heart disease risk plummets to half as blood vessel function improves. 5 years in, the chance of a clot forming dramatically declines, and the risk of stroke continues to reduce. After 10 years, the chances of developing fatal lung cancer go down by 50%, probably because the body's ability to repair DNA is once again restored. 15 years in, the likelihood of developing coronary heart disease is essentially the same as that of a non-smoker. There's no point pretending this is all easy to achieve. Quitting can lead to anxiety and depression resulting from nicotine withdrawal. But fortunately, such effects are usually temporary, and quitting is getting easier thanks to a growing arsenal of tools. Nicotine replacement therapy through gum, skin patches, lozenges, and sprays may help wean smokers off cigarettes. They work by stimulating nicotine receptors in the brain and thus preventing withdrawal symptoms without the addition of other harmful chemicals. Counseling and support groups, cognitive behavioral therapy, and moderate intensity exercise also help smokers stay cigarette-free. That's good news, since quitting puts you and your body on the path back to health. If you want to see more videos,
Although the information in that video is very complex, you should have been able to get a good idea of the damage that smoking can do to your body. And it's more than just the damage it can do to your lungs. Let's see if I can get to the next slide. All right. From the video, you saw that smoking causes tooth decay. It causes a variety of different types of cancer. It causes you to lose your smell and for you to smell in general. Wrinkling of the skin. It is addicting. It causes weakened bones. It impacts breathing. It damages your eyesight. It increases the risk of heart diseases like heart attack, blood pressure, stroke. It makes it more difficult for women to get pregnant. It causes discoloration of the nails and hands. Overall, it increases your risk of death. Just a couple facts that I found prevalent about smoking. All of these came directly from the Center for Disease Control. Smoking is the most preventable cause of death in the United States. What that means is smoking is a choice. You choose to smoke or you choose not to smoke. A lot of the other things like heart disease are genetic. Okay, you can't choose who your parents are. You can't choose what they did before you. A lot of those things are pre-existing conditions and come from your parents or grandparents and so on and so forth. 9 out of 10 adult smokers started in their teens. All right. Usually, if you can make it through your younger years, you are not going to begin smoking when you get older. All right. And you'll see a little bit more information on that in a video that we have later. 1 in 20 middle school students and 1 in 5 high school students have tried smoking in the last 30 days. All right. That's in the last 30 days. We've been in school, even though it's only been about 70 days with all the breaks, weekends, and things like that. Probably about 120 days. That means at least 4 of the people probably in your class right now have tried smoking in the last 30 days. Smokers on average die 10 years earlier than non-smokers. Children from parents who smoke are 3 times more likely to smoke. Smoking a pack of cigarettes every other day costs about $5,000 a year. There are some people that smoke a pack a day. That's $10,000 a year. There are some people that smoke 2 packs a day. That's almost $20,000 a year. All right, if you do every other day for 10 years, that's $50,000. That's not only a new car, that's a pretty nice new vehicle. All right, what makes smoking so dangerous? Tobacco products, including cigarettes, cigars, pipe tobacco, e-cigarettes, vapes, Maj, Juuls, all contain the chemical nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical that makes it difficult for smokers to quit. Once you start, it is very difficult to stop. The best way is to not start in the first place. Again, here's a short presentation on what nicotine actually is.
Nicotine is addictive. That's a fact. However, it is not the primary cause of smoking-related diseases. Nicotine actually occurs naturally in tobacco leaves, but it's not until those leaves are burnt or heated that this chemical is released. Once inhaled, it takes a matter of seconds to be absorbed into the bloodstream, where it travels directly to the brain. From there, it binds itself to specific receptors and triggers the release of dopamine. Nicotine is addictive and has what's known as pharmacological effects, including increasing heart rate as well as blood pressure. It should never be taken by adolescents, pregnant women, or people with heart conditions. And of course, quitting tobacco and nicotine use altogether is always the best option.
All right. Again, continuing along. One other quote that I have later in another video that we're going to watch is the effects of nicotine are similar to those of cocaine or heroin. Okay? The addictive effects are similar to those of cocaine or heroin. Let that sink in for just a minute. The next thing that we're going to go into, if I can get these videos to work correctly, is how smoking, the effects of smoking are progressive. Okay, we talked about progressive earlier when we were talking about some of the fitness tests. However, I want to go into the effects or how the effects of smoking is progressive. What I mean by that is the more often that someone smokes or the longer someone smokes increases the likelihood of having the negative health effects or the severity of those effects. Okay, so if you smoke for 30 years, you're more likely to have cancer. If you smoke 2 packs of cigarettes a day, you're going to have a more difficult time breathing than someone else. However, this also has the opposite effect. What that means is that the less someone smokes or the sooner they quit, the faster they will recover from the effects of smoking, like we saw at the end of the video. The next thing I'm going to get into is specifically for middle school or younger students. I guess I could say teens, all right? Again, this information is directly from the CDC. I'll just go over a couple things. We're going to watch a video. I'm going to point out a couple quotes, and we'll be just about done. E-cigarettes and vaping is the most common use of tobacco among teens since 2014. Not only did we ask that question yesterday on our exit slip because it's going to be on the quiz tomorrow, but also to see what we thought people thought, or to see what our students thought, right? Less than 50% of the students actually got that answer correct. Many believe e-cigarettes do not contain nicotine, so they don't think it's addicting. However, 99% of e-cigarettes do contain nicotine. The final thing that I think is one of the most important things is that we do not know the long-term effects of e-cigarettes and vaping, all right? Again, here's a short presentation specifically on e-cigarettes and vaping.
People have been smoking for at least 7,000 years, but it wasn't until the 1800s that cigarettes became the smoke of choice, after machines were developed to mass produce them. 200 years later, in 2003, the electronic cigarette was invented in China, and since then the use of e-cigarettes, also called vaping, has grown exponentially around the world. E-cigarettes are electronic devices that vaporize a flavored liquid. They all used to look like cigarettes, but now they come in many shapes and sizes. Many look like pens or small boxes called mods. What they all have in common is 1. A power source, usually a lithium battery. 2. An atomizer, which heats the e-liquid. 3. E-liquid or e-juice, which usually contains flavors and nicotine. And 4. A cartridge or tank, which is filled with e-liquid. Heating the e-liquid creates a cloud of vapor that looks like smoke, but without a lot of the lethal components contained in tobacco smoke. Many people assume e-cigarettes are safer than traditional cigarettes because they don't burn anything or create tar in your lungs. But it took almost 7,000 years for humans to realize that tobacco causes lung cancer, throat and mouth cancer, causes heart attacks and strokes, and damages the lungs. E-cigs, meanwhile, have only been around a little over a decade, so there just hasn't been enough time to figure out what effects they'll have on your body. We do know that e-cigarettes deliver nicotine, just like the traditional cigarettes, causing increased heart rate and blood pressure. Nicotine also has powerful effects on the brain. It releases rewarding neurotransmitters in the brain, like dopamine, and changes brain chemistry. It is a stimulant, making people feel more alert, but when it goes away, people crave it even more. It can interfere with the body's own natural ability to make dopamine, and soon the user needs nicotine just to feel normal. The developing brain of teenagers is the most vulnerable to these effects. The powerful addictive nature of nicotine is so high that it's comparable to heroin and cocaine. Besides nicotine, e-cigarettes contain chemical solvents. When heated very high by some of the new e-cigarette devices, these solvents can be transformed into formaldehyde, which is a carcinogen. It causes cancer. These observations are concerning, but we really do not know what the long-term effects from inhaling these chemicals in your lungs will be. E-cigs contain many other chemicals to generate enticing flavors. In fact, there are almost 8,000 different flavors available today, so we don't know very much about many of them. We do know that some of the butter flavorings contain diacetyl, which is famous for causing popcorn lung. Popcorn lung is a disease called bronchiolitis obliterans, which is basically an irreversible scarring and destruction of the delicate lung tissue that can kill you. Strawberry and other healthy-sounding fruit flavors have been found to be cytotoxic and potentially cancer-causing as well. Vaping devices, or specifically the lithium batteries inside them, may explode unpredictably. Although uncommon, this happens frequently enough that e-cigarettes have been banned from luggage on airplanes. Unpredictable explosions have occurred in people's faces and mouths and resulted in serious injuries, including blindness. With these potential risks of e-cigarettes, the addictive nicotine, the exploding batteries, the carcinogenic liquids, why would any company want you to use them? Sales of e-cigarettes approach $8 billion per year and are increasing. The truth is, tobacco cigarettes kill about 50% of people who use them. So tobacco companies, known as Big Tobacco, need to keep recruiting young people to become addicted in order to stay in business. Here are some actual documented quotes from tobacco executives. "We don't smoke that shit. We just sell it. We reserve the right to smoke for the young, the poor, and the stupid. The base of our business is the high school student. The fragile self-image of the young person needs all the support it can get. Smoking may appear to enhance that self-image. Studies show that when people start to smoke in their teens, they become addicted and stay smokers as they grow older. Even those who swear they will never become addicted. Many of the same strategies that Big Tobacco used to hook your grandparents into smoking tobacco cigarettes have simply been modified and are being used today with an e-cig in place of a tobacco cig. E-cigarettes come in candy and dessert flavors like Skittles, gummy bears, and vanilla cupcake, directly aimed at teens. Ads always show thin, beautiful people vaping. Even the strategic use of humor is being successfully used to get customers on their side. The bottom line is that we are all faced with important personal choices every day. We don't yet know everything we need to know to make informed decisions about many things. But we can resist being manipulated. Take your time when making your own personal decisions. It can make all the difference.
Okay, just a couple things that really stuck out to me during that video were a few of the quotes, I'm going to quote here along with it, if I can get to the next slide. A few of those things that that really stood out to me, okay? It took over 7,000 years to realize the dangers of tobacco. E-cigarettes have been around for less than a decade, okay? So how do we even know what they do to you? There are over 8,000 flavors, including candy and dessert flavors like Skittles, gummy bears, and vanilla cupcakes. Who do you think those are aimed at? Some old person? Or those people like you that bring that candy to school every single day? E-cigarettes have been found to explode unpredictably. Did you watch those videos? Did you see the vapes blowing up in people's faces? You could go blind from that. Tobacco kills 50% of the people that use them. So who are they going to target? The young person, because you're going to continue to buy them. You're going to continue to smoke until you die, and they will continue to focus on them. The last one, these are exact quotes from billionaires who make money from people smoking. "We don't smoke that blank. We just sell it. We reserve the right to smoke for the young, the poor, and the stupid." All right? Again, who are these things aimed at? Right? I could sit here and give you facts on smoking until my face turns blue. All right? You could be the smartest person in the world. And the only thing that is important is if you are able to make that decision to say no. Again, the reason I made this presentation is because it directly affected me when I was in middle school, like you are now. Whether you think so or not, at some point, someone's going to ask you to try smoking in some form, and it's probably going to come in a lot sooner than you think if it has not already. Ultimately, the only person that's going to make that decision is you. Not me, not Ms. Burns, not my brother, not your parents, right? It's going to be you. What's your reason to say no? At that time, it was my grandpa that died of emphysema because he smoked in the military, okay? Now, I have Maisie. I have my family. I can't afford it, all right? If you look at any of my pictures, I wouldn't be able to smile with my teeth. I love playing sports. The last thing I want to do is play a pickup game of basketball and have to stop so I can huff and puff and catch my breath, all right? For those of you that don't know, my dad never smoked. However, he acquired throat cancer. I'll probably be more likely to get that, and if I smoked, I'd probably be more likely to die from that. And last, like I said earlier, my grandpa, who died from emphysema. All right, so what's your reason? Your future? Are you scared of dying? Your smile? You have a family history of people that smoke, making it more likely that you will. Sports, do you want to be good at them? Do you want to be able to breathe while you play them? How about your vision? Money, like for me. How about how you're going to smell? How about your family? How about those little siblings? How do you think that those, little preschool, elementary schoolers that are looking up to you are going to feel looking at you smoking? Asthma, pre-existing conditions, all right? Last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the story I talked about in the beginning, all right? When me and my buddy were at the park, we were asked to smoke by a sophomore. At the time, we were all friends. To this day, we are still friends, all right? During my 8th grade year and through the first few years of high school, things were a little different. They spent a lot more time hanging out. Eventually, that sophomore got his license. It's a lot easier to go drive around and smoke cigarettes when you have a car, all right? I spent a lot more time with my friends that didn't smoke, all right? But like I said, to this day, we're still friends, all right? But one thing hasn't changed. 19 years later, they continue to smoke. Every time I see them, they have a new strategy. Oh, I'm going to try vaping. I'm going to quit smoking cigarettes. Oh, I'm going to try chewing tobacco. That's going to get me to stop smoking cigarettes. Oh, I'm chewing this new gum. That's going to get me to stop smoking cigarettes. Every time they try it, and every single time they fail. All right, so again, nobody's going to make that decision except for you, and hopefully you have the knowledge to make the correct decision. Again, make sure that you paid attention to the things that are in red, as they're going to be on the quiz that you have tomorrow.